A Monster Followed Me to School by Mercer. There was a monster on our block. One day he was just there. I know because I saw him on my way home from school. I was scared that first time, so I ran away. Before dinner, I told my dad, but a monster on our block didn't seem to bother my dad at all. He just smiled and patted me on the head. Later on, he said I should spend more time figuring out how to do well at school and less time on monsters. I asked if I could be excused from the table. After dinner, I told my mom. She said it was probably the same monster that used to live under my bed. I told her this monster looked a lot different. My mom asked me to explain, but I went to my room to put on my pajamas instead. The next day I started walking to school like always, but pretty soon I had a funny feeling that monster might be following me. He was. He looked hungry. I didn't want to hang around with him if he was hungry. I figured he might do something weird all of a sudden, so I got out my lunch and gave it to him. He ate the whole thing, bag and all. Then he burped. Then he looked right at me and smiled. I mean, he really smiled. That's when I decided he liked me. I had to get going, so I started walking again. My monster walked right behind me, but nobody seemed to notice. Not one person said anything, not even the postman. When I got to school, Biff was waiting for me. He's the school bully. Biff has been pushing me around ever since I was a little kid. Biff walked up to me. All of a sudden, my monster happened to swing his tail around. Biff's legs flew right out from under him. He fell down and everyone laughed. Biff thought I did it. He was pretty mad. He told me I was going to get it after school. I opened my knapsack and got out the book I'd borrowed from Amy Frobush. But my monster grabbed the book right out of my hand and tried to eat it. When I gave Amy her book, she said she was going to show it to the teacher. I'm always getting into trouble. At school, my monster climbed right on top of the teacher's desk. Then he lay there making faces and sticking out his tongue. Boy, oh boy, I thought, would he ever get in trouble if the teacher saw him doing that? She would tell him he'd better be careful. His face could freeze that way. Thinking of that made me laugh, which meant I got in trouble. I had to write, "I will be quiet in class," 25 times on the blackboard. My monster got tired of waiting for me, so he blew all the papers off the teacher's desk. She rushed over to close the window, but the window wasn't open. At recess, my monster spent a lot of time on the slide. He even took turns. I thought that was great. Then he played kickball for a while. The best part was when he tripped Biff. Of course, Biff was sure I did it. Boy, was he mad. "You're really going to get it," he yelled. We were supposed to watch a video called Birds of Brazil, but the teacher couldn't find it. My monster was getting hungry again. I think he ate the video. We didn't do our worksheets because the teacher couldn't find those either. My monster probably ate those too. We drew pictures instead. I drew a picture of my monster. Everyone thought it was dumb. Then we practiced the song my teacher wrote for Parents' Night. This is how it started. "When I give my everything, I have a happy song to sing. I'm not too crazy about the song." My monster didn't want to be left out, so he sang along. He didn't really sing. He howled, and it sounded terrible. The teacher kept looking in our direction. I think she couldn't figure out what was going on. I didn't sing very well either. If my monster and I sang together a lot, all the kids in my class would probably move away. After singing practice, my monster left the room. I think he was bored or hungry. The next time I saw him was at lunch in the cafeteria. He waved at me. Then he reached into a big pot of chicken a la king and licked his paw. That was okay with me. I hate chicken a la king. I bought myself a bag of potato chips. I had to get something because my monster had eaten my lunch. I'm pretty sure our principal saw him later that day. I was just standing there. The principal went running down the hall, moaning. They said he went home after that. In the afternoon, Amy Frobish showed her beat-up book to the teacher. The teacher made me stay after the bell and write, "I will take good care of things I borrow," 25 times on the blackboard. Then I had to erase the whole blackboard before the teacher would let me leave. When I finally got out of school, Biff was waiting for me. He was going to beat me up. Everyone was there to watch what happened, even Amy Frobish. First, I thought I would run back inside of the school building and hide, but I'd just have to come out sooner or later. Then I thought maybe I should just faint and lie on the ground real still. But then everyone would say I was chicken. No, I decided I'd just have to get beat up. Then the strangest thing happened. Biff looked in my direction and his eyes got big. His mouth dropped open. Then he ran off down the street. I turned around. There was my monster right behind me. I guess Biff could see him too. What a great feeling. The two of us were too much for Biff. I started home. I knew my monster was behind me. I figured he'd walk the whole way with me. When the light turned green, I crossed the street like I always do, but my monster didn't cross behind me. He stayed on the other side near school. I watched for a while to see what he was going to do. What he did was turn around and walk back to the school building. I figured he liked school, or maybe it was the cafeteria. When I got home, I told my mom what happened. She said school was a good place for a monster. She liked the part about the principal running down the hall. When my dad got home, I didn't tell him what happened. I didn't think he'd like the part about me writing things 25 times. One thing was sure, I was never going to borrow anything from Amy Frobish ever again. Before it got completely dark, I went outside. I rode my bike around the block just to double check. My monster wasn't anywhere. We definitely don't have a monster on our block anymore. He's at my school, I think. He lives in the basement there because this winter the boiler has broken down 3 times so far. Our janitor always makes his assistant go down there, and our principal quit. They told us he had a medical problem, but I don't think so. Biff doesn't hit me anymore. He even crosses the street when he sees me coming, which is great. I hope he keeps it up. I'm even friends with Amy Frobish again. I'm glad the monster followed me to school. I miss him sometimes. I might want to try to find him again someday. If I do, I can always go down to the basement and check behind the boiler. A Monster Followed Me to School by Mercer.